Hi everyone. Today we're going to be covering topic 1, more specifically chapter 2, and that first section that goes over all of the chemical components needed to start to actually dive into our biology concepts. Right, the objectives we're going to cover in today's lesson is we will explain the importance of chemical principles to cell biology, and we will identify the importance of water and hydrogen bonds for life. Right. Chemistry is considered a fundamental science because all other sciences must follow the laws of chemistry. This makes chemistry very important for understanding life and even biology itself. Chemistry directly relates to biology because all known life is carbon-based. The study of carbon compounds is referred to as organic chemistry. The chemical reactions that are required for life typically occur in aqueous solutions. An aqueous solution is a solution that is water-based and require a narrow range of temperatures for optimal function. If we get out of that ideal range of temperatures or pH, then the potential proteins involved could denature or the reaction itself might not ever happen. Cells require a large amount of very complex chemistry for even the most basic functions. For example, the cell membrane. The cell membrane of any cell is a combination of complex chemical properties and reactions. These chemical properties of large and small molecules directly drives many biological processes. Due to the extreme complexity of chemistry, it must be strictly regulated. And the regulation reduces the amount of error within the biological mechanisms. So let's begin with some of the most basic chemistry terms. What is matter? Matter is made up of a combination of elements. An atom is the smallest particle of an element that still retains its distinctive chemical properties. Atoms cannot be broken down by chemical means. Elements are composed of the same atoms, and all known elements are listed on the periodic table of elements. Elements will form chemical bonds and form molecules. A very simplistic example is water, which involves the bonding of hydrogen and oxygen to form H2O. You can see this in the image here. We have the larger water molecule with two hydrogens bonded with it, and we'll get into the structure of that soon. So what makes up an atom? All atoms are composed of electrons, neutrons, and protons. What makes them different is how those three subatomic particles interact with each other and the amount of them that are present. The center of an atom is referred to as the nucleus and is composed of protons and neutrons. Protons contain a positive charge, while neutrons are considered electrically neutral. The atomic number of all elements is determined by the number of protons a given atom contains. Electrons have a negative charge and orbit the nucleus. A neutral atom contains an equal amount of protons and electrons. The mass of a given atom is the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. The mass of an electron is so small that it's considered negligible. So isotopes also exist. An isotope is an atom with a different number of neutrons but the same number of protons. Let's remember that those protons are what's going to determine which element we are examining. So if you look at the carbon example here on this slide, we're looking at carbon 12 and carbon 14. So carbon 12 has 6 protons and carbon 14 has 6 protons. However, carbon 12 only has 6 neutrons, while carbon 14 has 8 neutrons. And because the mass is the combination of protons and neutrons, carbon 14 is a heavier element. Right? Neutrons play a vital role in the stability of an atom. If there are too many or too few neutrons, the atom may become unstable or break down by what we call radioactive decay. Multiple isotopes can exist for a given element. As previously mentioned, a very common example is carbon. Carbon-12 is considered stable, while carbon-14 is not stable. It's actually considered radioactive because it has too many neutrons. Carbon-14 will undergo radioactive decay at a very slow rate, will actually allow scientists to estimate the age of organic compounds using its rate of decay. When determining how atoms interact with each other, valence electrons are going to play a vital role. Valence electrons are the electrons that are in the outermost energy level for a given element. If we look at our chart here, group 1 is going to have 1 valence electron, while group 14 is going to have 4 valence electrons. For those groups on the right side of the periodic table, we simply go off of the second number. So 14 will have 4, 17 will have 7, and 18 will have 8. Those elements in group 18 are considered to have a full valence electron shell, which makes them relatively stable. Alrighty, while the group number is going to determine the number of valence electrons, the period will determine how many energy levels that element has. So group 1 has 1 energy level, group 2 has 2 energy levels, and group 3 has 3. Note that the first energy level for all atoms can only hold 2 electrons. The valence electrons will determine how a given atom will interact with other atoms and what type of chemical bonds can be formed. Atoms form chemical bonds to satisfy the octet rule and become a more stable form. An element with 8 valence electrons is considered to be neutral and rarely forms chemical bonds. And as mentioned earlier, those are your elements that are in group 18. Alright, so there are 2 types of chemical bonds that I want to address first. We have ionic bonds and covalent bonds. In an ionic bond, the electrons are transferred from one atom to another. The image here on the left is showing you how a sodium atom will donate an electron to a chlorine atom. Ionic compounds exist in a ratio of the atoms that are involved. Alrighty, in this example, sodium chloride, the sodium and chlorine exist into a 1-to-1 ratio in a crystal lattice. By donating the 1 electron to chlorine, sodium now has a full outer energy shell. And by accepting an electron, the chlorine accepting an electron, it has also satisfied its octet rule. This bond makes a highly reactive metal and a toxic gas into a very stable form, commonly known as table salt. Ionic bonds are going to form between a metal and a nonmetal, also referred to as a cation or an anion, and is due to the electrostatic attraction. The metal will have a positive charge that makes it a cation. I have a very silly acronym I teach my students, but I say cations are positive because cats have paws, and they always remember it. And a nonmetal, which will have a negative charge. All right, in covalent bonds, 2 or more electrons are shared between atoms. The image shows how a fluorine atom will covalently bond by sharing 2 electrons. So this is 2 fluorine atoms. Both naturally have 7 valence electrons, but when they each share 1 valence electron with each other, then they will both be happy with a full 8 valence electrons. All right, covalent bonds are going to form between 2 nonmetals, and these atoms can form single, double, or triple bonds. Triple bonds are usually the shortest and take the most energy to break, while double bonds get a little bit longer and require a little less energy, and single bonds are the longest and the easiest to break when compared to other covalent bonds. Covalent bonds are referred to as either polar or non-polar. A non-polar covalent bond is able to have almost completely equal sharing of electrons, while a polar covalent bond, we're going to have unequal sharing. That means one of the atoms involved is going to take more control of an electron than another atom involved. This is going to result in a partial positive charge on one side of a molecule and a partial negative side on the other side of the molecule. Water is an example of a polar covalent bond. The oxygen atom is more electronegative than the hydrogen atoms, which creates a partial negative charge on the oxygen side of the molecule, while a partial positive side on the hydrogen side. Alrighty. This distribution of electrons cause water to actually form a bent shape because of the way the electrons are pulled within the molecule. An additional type of chemical bond that should be mentioned when speaking about chemical properties of biology are hydrogen bonds. These bonds are going to form when a slight positive charge of hydrogen is electrically attracted to the negative charge of another atom. Two water molecules is a great example of hydrogen bonding. This can be seen on the image in the left. The partial negative charge of oxygen is being attracted to the partial positive charge of one of the hydrogens. This is what's going to cause the water to form a crystal structure as it freezes, as those hydrogen bonds form a more rigid structure. This is extremely important due to the chemistry of all cells, as approximately 70% of the cell's weight is contributed to water, and most intercellular reactions occur in aqueous solutions. Hydrogen bonds are weaker than covalent bonds and are easily broken when adding thermal energy. Water has a lot of unique chemical properties that make it important to biology concepts. The first one we're going to discuss is the high specific heat. Water has a specific heat of 4.184 joules, which means it would take 4.184 joules of thermal energy to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. Water has the high specific heat when compared to all other liquids. Due to this, water does not change temperature easily. This is crucial for maintaining an internal stability of cells and organisms. Additionally, the slow change in temperature prevents the large bodies of water from increasing or decreasing in temperature too quickly. Keeps that marine ecosystem stable for the organisms living within it. All right, the next property of water we're going to talk about is the high heat of evaporation. Like the high specific heat, water also takes a large amount of energy to change from a liquid to a gas. This helps organisms retain water and prevents dehydration. Additionally, it prevents large bodies of water from completely evaporating and eliminating aquatic ecosystems. An additional property of water, the third one listed here, is the high polarity. And this was addressed when we talked about the positive and partial charges earlier in this presentation. Those hydrogen bonds are what ultimately causes a lot of the other unique properties of water. The high surface tension of water is the fourth property we're discussing. The cohesive nature of water leads to water having a high surface tension. Water molecules tightly cling to each other. At the surface, the bonds between the individual molecules are stronger than the molecules that are beneath them. This is because there is less molecules overall surrounded by them, so the stronger bonds can cause more dense objects to actually float at the surface of water. Alrighty, and our last property we're going to discuss is its low density as a solid. So water is the only recorded substance that is less dense as a solid. This is due to the hydrogen bonds, which form a crystal structure as they freeze. This is why the ice cubes expand. I'm sure everyone's experienced this in their freezer. They put something in there, it expanded like a water bottle, and then sometimes it can even burst. This is critical to the survival of aquatic ecosystems because the ice will float at the top first. So that top layer of ice will actually create a layer of insulin for the lower layers of water and prevent that water from getting too cold too quickly, and hopefully prevent it from freezing so that all of the organisms living in that aquatic environment can help maintain the stable environment they need to survive. Alrighty everyone, that concludes our presentation on the chemical properties and how they relate to biology concepts. Hopefully from this presentation you now have at least the basic understandings of chemistry and what you need to be successful throughout a biology course. Being a high school chemistry and biology teacher, it blows my mind that chemistry comes after biology. I would prefer to see chemistry taught first so we can really understand those biology concepts that we throw at our freshmen. But unfortunately, I don't dictate the order of courses. But I do thoroughly enjoy when my chemistry students make the connections between things they've learned in bio and what I'm currently teaching them in chemistry. All right. I wish everyone the best of luck in the rest of this course and look forward to working with you in the future. Have a great day. Bye.